is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to the Vintage RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse, hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the editor-in-chief of Unwinnable.com. It took us an entire year to get to this episode because we literally forgot about Forgotten Realms. Stu Horvath.
Indeed. It's okay to forget about Forgotten Realms, I think.
Not really, because I figure it's like a really important setting to D&D. But forgetting is in the title, so I feel okay with it.
Yeah.
So today we are going to talk about Forgotten Realms for the meat of this episode. We're also going to talk about Things from the Flood, coming out from the creators of Tales from the Loop. And now, what I'm really excited about is I got a brand new game, and it's a game about Jaws.
You know what's weird? I love that movie, but I don't love that movie nearly as much as you and Dave do. Like, you guys just, like, your heads exploded when you realized that this thing existed.
Our friend Dave loves Jaws. I love Jaws. Most people I know love Jaws. Like, Jaws is the kind of movie that you just don't turn off once you turn it on, or if it comes on cable or you see it anywhere. If it's on a plane, I'm watching Jaws.
You guys are on a different level, though. Like, we open the box and you're just like, the interior pattern design matches the suit that the mayor's wearing. This detail is just so spot on. It's just like, wow, I never would have noticed. It's just some gray anchors.
Well, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Because we've got a lot to say about Jaws.
One of us does.
I can talk for a while. So Jaws is out now from Ravensburger Games. It is a Target exclusive, and it is an actual 2-game all rolled up into one. The first part is Amity Island, in which you are on the trail of Jaws, trying to stop Jaws from killing all the swimmers. And Part 2 actually takes place on the Orca, where you play the crew of the Orca fighting for your lives to defeat Jaws. Both games are 2 completely different games, all in one amazing, perfectly designed box. If you are a fan of Jaws, this game is absolutely for you because you do get to play as Brody, Hooper, and Quint as you hunt the shark. And now this is a point of contention. Only one of you gets to play as Jaws, and everybody wants to be Jaws. We let our friend Dave be Jaws in this game because Dave was the one that hipped it to us. He saw it on bloodydisgusting.com on a lark. He sent me a link. I drove directly to Target, and I bought the game.
So we have our priorities really straight. Like,
we are adults.
Like, we got it. Yep. Adults adulting. I think it's super interesting that Dave wanted to be the shark, and then as the shark, he was just like, wow, this is a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
All of the heavy lifting of the first half of the game is done by the shark because you have to plan in secret and sort of, it's a little bit like one of those programming games where you've planned out your moves ahead of time and then the other people react to it and find out what you did. And it took a little while for Dave to kind of grok that.
Because you do get a secret shark tracker pad.
Yeah.
Which is cool because it looks like a clue pad.
Yeah.
But on the pad, what you're going to do is you're going to mark off where you were, how many swimmers you ate, and if you use one of your special power cards. Now, you get 4 special power cards in the first half of the game, which gives Jaws bonuses like going on a feeding frenzy, making extra moves. But once you use them, you lose them.
Yeah.
But you keep track of this. And as Jaws, your goal is to eat 9 swimmers. As Brody, Hooper, and Quint, your goal is to attach 2 barrels to Jaws, thus triggering the second half of the game.
Yeah, the sensor barrels.
The
right?
sensor barrels, which is something that you can trigger as Jaws, which will give hints to where Jaws is on the different beaches around Amity Island. A lot of great gameplay dynamics here. What I really did appreciate about it is that this is a game for 2 to 4 players. So if you're playing 2 players, one person controls Brody, Quint, and Hooper. One person controls Jaws. Otherwise, it becomes a cooperative thing where the dudes are all against Jaws and they're all in it together.
Yeah, I can't imagine playing the first half as a 2-player thing. Like, I feel like it would be just so out of balance for Jaws because I would have so many moves to make.
You would think so. However, if the person playing Jaws really tunes into how to move Jaws properly.
Yeah.
Watching it, because I purchased the game, but it was only 4 players, so I kind of wanted to oversee it and kind of be able to check the rules as we went. I was the ocean master. I'm trying to get that over.
Is that a villain from Aquaman?
It is a villain for Aquaman. We're just going to play through on that. So the thing is, as I was doing it, I was watching how the gameplay unfolded and how it really does work with the rules. And it is essentially like playing Keep Away and Clue at the same time.
Yeah, there's definitely like a battleship sort of component to it. We played it wrong too. Like we messed up the barrels mechanic, and I think that kind of weighted it in our favor as the non-sharks.
Well, that was the thing. What we realized in the rules was that the barrels don't automatically generate on the docks.
Yeah,
Because
I
you-
have to. I
yeah,
had to
Brody
shuffle them. Yeah,
has to go and pick up the barrels from the docks and bring them over to people as one of his moves. It's a really cool first half of the game because the goal is to win as either the men on the island or on the boats or as Jaws. And what that does is it dictates how many extra cards you get for the second half of the game, which takes place on the Orca, which is pretty cool. You guys finished where Jaws got 7 bonus cards and you guys had to split 6 between you.
Yeah.
So when you flip it over, you have the Orca. Now, the Orca has boat tiles, which are either perfectly complete, damaged, or you remove them and you just see the water underneath. And your goal is to move around the boat and figure out where Jaws is going to surface from, attack Jaws. Jaws has 18 hit points. The guys each have 5 apiece. Each one has 2 specific weapons or items, and then you get the bonus cards on top of that, and you need to do that to kill Jaws. Now, Jaws has surface cards to kind of hint to where Jaws is going to surface. Jaws picks secretly where they're going to surface. The guys decide where they think Jaws is going to go by using these 3 cards, and then they attack. And it is awesome because as you attack the boat, you damage the boat. The guys go in the water. You get a free attack on them. If the guys are in the water, you're attacking them. The goal here is if you are Brody, Quint, and Hooper, you have to kill Jaws. Jaws wins if he eats all 3 characters or completely destroys the boat. And for a game that is made about a movie with a giant shark in it, I feel like they really got the mechanic of the shark popping up and rearing out of the water, and they did it so well that you do get 2 completely different experiences. Like there are 3 dice that you roll to attack in the second half of the game. You don't use them at all in the first half of the game. This is 2 completely different games and 2 completely different gaming experiences in one box.
yeah. I would say that when you hit the second part, the Orca, play through it once. It's going to feel extremely unbalanced at a certain point. I think that everybody at the table, including the shark, was just like, this is way too easy for the shark. And I think that is by design because like it's in the middle section where you're just like, there's no way we're going to kill this shark. He's got too many hit points. He's already trashed half the boat. And then all of a sudden it changes. And if you've held out long enough and smart enough, you have enough stuff to like really wail on him one turn, because as the boat shrinks, he could pop up less places. So you have more of an idea of where he's going to pop up. So you can concentrate your fire. And like, I knew that going in and I lost the threat. We all lost the threat on that halfway through just because it felt so unbalanced. And then at the end, it happened and we killed Jaws.
As you should kill Jaws.
Yeah.
Smile, you son of a bitch. And you know what? No one actually uttered that. I was very disappointed that no one got that off at the very end.
Because we kind of screwed up and jumped the gun. We thought Dave picked where he was going to surface and we all committed to a spot. And he was just like, well, it's screwed up. Like, we messed it up.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like it was a clean win. A clean win is when you say, smile, you son of a bitch.
There you go. So look, it's a fun game. It is currently at Target for $30. If you're clever and you use the Google machine, I'm sure you could find it in some other outlets. It's unfortunately not at your friendly local gaming store. This is currently a Target exclusive. That said, if you go to Ravensburger's website, there is a video you could watch to learn how to play the game. Or if you go anywhere on YouTube, there are already people explaining to you how to play this game. So you won't make the same mistakes that we did. Highly recommend this. Going to be a great game to go into steady rotation at the clubhouse.
Buy it for your beach house.
Oh, Stu. Yes. Crap. I wish we had this when we went on vacation together.
Yeah. If we had this at the shore, that would have been like a really perfect thematic thing. But we didn't know about it.
Well, you live, you learn.
Yeah.
Folks, great game design. If you love Jaws and maybe you're not the biggest board game player, you're still going to love this game. And if you love board games, it's essentially getting 2 for $1 for $30. Buy Jaws now. So before we get into the meat of this podcast, our favorite friendly local game store, Noble Knight Games, has given us a brand new coupon code good from July 21st to August 5th. This code is Summer Moon. Now, you don't need to capitalize it. The coupon is good for $5 off orders for $25 or more before tax and shipping costs applied. So if you're interested in Forgotten Realms, they obviously have all that cool out-of-print goodness for your vintage gaming needs. If you're looking for new games, card games, games of all types, Noble Knight is where you're going to want to go. They are the friendly local gaming store if you are in Wisconsin, but let's face it, everything's local on the internet. So between July 21st and August 5th, 2019, don't forget to use the code SUMMERMOON and get $5 off all orders $25 or more. And make sure you check out Noble Knight's Instagram and Facebook for updates on new releases and events. And with that, we are going to switch gears and move on to the meat of the podcast, if you will. We're going to talk about Forgotten Realms.
Yeah. Wow, Forgotten Realms. How have we skipped this for so long? It's because I'm not really that thrilled with Forgotten Realms. It's not like my favorite setting.
Yeah, and you would think that it would be something completely in your wheelhouse because it came out during second edition.
Yeah, but it's like the boring part of second edition for me. It's like the part that like everybody played and like was excited about, and it wasn't weird enough for me.
You do like the weird stuff.
I do like the weird stuff.
Stu likes the weird. I like the cute.
It's no Spelljammer.
It's certainly no Spelljammer.
But I do like a version of Forgotten Realms. I like the version of Forgotten Realms that sort of exists in Ed Greenwood's head before TSR purchases it, right?
All right, so talk to us about that.
So I believe he started working on it in 1967, and it was just sort of a intellectual exercise, creating a world, right? You know, you read Tolkien, you see he builds this world and go, oh, I can do that. So that's what Ed Greenwood did. He's a librarian, so he had a lot of time.
That's so cool.
So as D&D comes out, he's just like, well, this makes sense. I could use my world to set my D&D games in, which he plays in, you know, the community room at night at his local library.
Okay, you're selling me so hard on this. That's even cooler.
Yeah. So a lot of the events that his players are playing through, you know, with Shadowdale and the Knights of Mithranor and all that stuff, all of that is getting baked into the history of the realms that will eventually become a commercial release, which I think is really cool. When they finally get it out in 1987, it's partly a response to Gygax leaving the company and not taking Greyhawk with him because TSR kept the rights to that. But because Gygax was gone, they didn't feel comfortable really working in that world and focusing on that world. So they needed a new world.
Oh, so they got a new hotter girlfriend.
Exactly.
In Forgotten Realms.
So Ed Greenwood at this point had been corresponding with the editors of Dragon Magazine for years at this point, writing tons of articles, basically writing articles about his homebrew game that players could then incorporate into their games. And bit by bit, little hints of his Forgotten Realms sort of saw print in Dragon Magazine. Jeff Grubb, who's at DSR, sees this stuff, loves this stuff, works with Ed Greenwood to put it together as a campaign setting, and eventually brokers this deal to bring it in 1987 as TSR's central campaign setting. I believe there was a small cash purchase. They also bought him a computer. They made an agreement that basically said that if they want to continue to use the Forgotten Realms, they have to guarantee Ed Greenwood is able to publish a novel set in the Forgotten Realms every year.
So he got a small cash settlement,
Yeah.
an Apple II,
Yeah.
and the ability to use his own campaign settings for what he wanted to write.
I am pretty sure that it was an Apple of some sort, too. Yeah,
Of course it was. I mean, in fairness, in 1987's computers were not cheap.
No, absolutely not. I think for the time, I think that was a good deal. Like, you know, you get to continue to make stuff for your world that's being custodianed by a big company, and you're still getting paid for that stuff, I think.
Right.
You get a cash settlement, you get a nice, sweet computer, and you get to make a novel every year that you also get paid for.
It's like the weirdest way to go about getting job security.
Yeah, it is sort of a really weird job security thing, right?
Yeah.
So the thing that's interesting is the first Forgotten Realms box set that comes out doesn't detail the entire world.
Really?
Yeah, it leaves huge chunks of it wide open. The Heartlands section is basically left for the DM to develop on their own. So there's like a big hole in the middle of the map.
That's so weird, but cool in its own weird way. That's like, hey, you know, you are the storyteller. You're the dungeon master. This section is your land.
Yeah, make
Figure
it
it out.
yours. Yeah, that's something that's definitely like a late 80s kind of convention for D&D. And I think that it's something that definitely fades out by the second or third box set. They're just like, no, we got to fill all this in. That's valuable real estate that we're letting go to seed. The first box set's weird, though, because it's huge. Toril, which is the continent, is just a gigantic, massive land. And they spend a lot of time sort of giving you a big overview. And you get a big overview of all the major NPCs. And all of it's kind of boring.
Really?
Yeah, especially when you compare it to what you know from the Greenwood articles in Dragon Magazine.
Which were pretty cool.
Yeah, I love that stuff. He's got a 2-part article on his approach to hell that is an absolute classic. And it's just so good, and it's foundational for D&D. And then they don't really capitalize on it. So it's like this one moment in time where they did it like perfect. And it's Ed Greenwood, not even TSR internal.
So do you think that when it got internal to TSR, they kind of watered it down a little bit?
Yeah, well, I don't think that they watered it down. That speaks to a sort of intent that I don't think that they had. I think that they wound up watering it down in service of kind of making it for a collaborative world kind of thing. You got to remember too, this is 87. People still didn't know how to do this stuff. So like we take campaign settings for granted because now there's been so many of them and we have ideas about how to do it. But back then they didn't. Really they only had Greyhawk, which was kind of like a series of film sets. Like Gygax just built that as he needed. Like there was no attempt at making it like an ecological thing.
I will give you that. Greyhawk did always kind of feel like those old movie set Western towns.
Exactly.
Where you see the storefronts and all the buildings, you see like the hotel, you see the sheriff's office, but when you walk inside, you could see it's all on stilts.
Like I think about it a lot because in my head, Greyhawk feels very much like a lot of the sets from the Conan movie, which are very obviously sets. And I just I've always thought about Greyhawk that way. And Dragonlance was also hobbled. It was earlier than Forgotten Realms, but it was hobbled by that whole novel pre-generated story and characters thing. So like those are the two big campaign settings at this point. Nobody really knew how to do it. So when Forgotten Realms comes out, it is a huge step forward, but it's also kind of a generic step. I think that they took out a lot of Ed's stuff because they just thought that it was too set in stone. And then almost immediately they start going about building their own meta story that happens in the realms. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. And I just feel like it gets too big, too fast, with too many crazy characters and events. And it just became more than I was ever willing to really put up with or catch up with,
Yeah, I mean, that's usually how it goes. And I think that's telling of every edition. Now, Forgotten Realms, it did drop in 87, so that does put it 3 or 4 years before second edition actually came out.
Yeah,
so it's right on the cusp.
Right there. And basically because of that, they launch it, they start establishing some of this stuff, and then immediately have a crazy event that resets the world. They had this idea that they could have these events happen that would transition your players from first edition to second edition, right?
Wow, that sounds like some DC Comics bullshit right
there.
Oh,
yeah.
So they did their own version of Crisis?
Yeah, it's called the Avatar Trilogy. It was 3 books where the time of troubles happens and like some of the gods die. And there were 3 modules that tied into it, and it changes the paradigm for the setting. This is how you get Cyric, who shows up in Prince of Lies, which is a little bit later in the 90s. It's a big paradigm shift in the cosmology of the realms.
They did something similar to that in 2013 called The Sundering.
Is that when Mystra dies and like the spell web collapses and magic starts getting messed up?
Essentially, it's their way to create the multiverse of D&D. So 5th edition, I know, take it in. So 5th edition does essentially start off in the Forgotten Realms, but in 2015, Jeremy Crawford said that D&D is now a multiverse. So everything that's kind of happened, every realm that they've gone to, it all exists. But the first adventures that they released, Tyranny of Dragons, Horde of the Dragon Queen, that does take place in Forgotten Realms, and it kind of branches off from there. Because, I mean, clearly Ravenloft is not Forgotten Realms.
I don't know.
Did I just break your brain?
It just makes me so tired. There's a way to go about this. This isn't it. Because on top of everything that we've already discussed, you've got the Drizzt books, you've got like Ring of Winter, you've got all of this stuff. Al-Qadim is part of the Forgotten Realms. I think Maztica is also part of the Forgotten Realms, a new continent that's sort of based on Mesoamerican motifs. It's just like, man, give me a break.
So what we've learned historically is that a crisis never works.
Yeah.
So what happened was, and I'm just quick glancing at Wikipedia to get the information here. So essentially it was referred to a war, gods and plain folks trying to get by. It was a cataclysm in the Forgotten Realms that essentially simplified the set of rules that are going to be detailed in the upcoming 5th edition, which at the time was called D&D Next.
Yeah. This makes sense because even back in the 90s, every event kind of created more and more like weird crap that happened in the Forgotten Realms. So like the Time of Trouble spawns like wild magic. You have like these zones where like magic surges and like the effects are unpredictable. The Faerun in Myth Drannor, they have like bubbles where like you can control how magic works. And
right.
It's just like, oh, like it's just so much. You can't just explore then. Like, you put out all of this stuff, it creates more stuff that you have to buy and read, and like you can't just have your players go there and like poke around, you know? There's barriers to entry.
Right, which sucks.
Yeah.
Which one thing I will absolutely give credit to 5th edition is that there is no barrier for entry.
Yeah.
So if they did in fact create a multiverse, they made a simple set of rules that no matter where you go, you can play D&D the same way. Different spells, different cool outfits, maybe some cool new creatures and monsters, but nonetheless, you're here, you roll these dice, Bob's your uncle.
Yeah. I like playing the continuity games sometimes. Like, I like doing it with comics sometimes, you know? But like with D&D, I don't want to play your continuity game. Like,
Right.
I want to make my own continuity. Like, I don't need you guys reading novels and coming and telling me what's happening in my world, you know?
Right. Right. 100%.
Not that that's bad. It's just that that's a complication and a thing that I have to like manage as a DM.
Yeah, they call that hashtag synergy. Synergy. Triangle.
And I think that because it was so early and because it grew so big, it's just been this massive thing that had, for most of its lifetime, is just unmanageable on like a player level, on a DM level, and on like the corporate creator level. It's hard to know what or where to go in.
Why can't it just be some maps and some monsters?
Yeah.
And this is what you do. This is what the weather's like in Faerun.
Yeah. Well, I don't ever care what the weather's like. But
historically, no, you do not.
like, it's not interesting to my games. So compare this, just to get a non-D&D example. Take Glorantha from RuneQuest, which started as a war game in like 77 or so. It turns into RuneQuest role-playing game. And there's a huge, crazy world, arguably bigger and more complex than Forgotten Realms. But what they've done over the years is they've developed it in one moment of time. There's basically like a 10-year period that they've constantly been releasing material on, so that it's super fleshed out. And that's the starting point. They've always said that this is where you start.
Right.
And then after this point, your Glorantha may vary. And I just think that that's like a much more reasonable way to kind of go about world building. But again, this is in a hugely experimental phase in the industry. Nobody knew that. I just think that Chaosium happened to find a better solution for it earlier that people not necessarily have embraced as much too.
Which, there's a lot to be said for that as well. There's writing that indie hit that a lot of people love versus writing that everyman track that everyone gets down to at their summer jams.
Yeah, I mean, Forgotten Realms, like, I don't like Forgotten Realms particularly because I find it to be overly generic. That is also why a lot of people love Forgotten Realms.
Right.
Forgotten Realms is massively popular. It has existed for every edition of D&D since it came out. It has sold millions of books, not just role-playing source books, but they have best-selling fantasy novels, like the Drizzt books. R.A. Salvatore's like gigantic saga of Drizzt. There's so much money.
Hey man, 50 million Drizzt fans can't be wrong.
Exactly. It's not to my taste, but I understand why people like it.
It's interesting because they've not, in 5th edition, uttered the words Forgotten Realms, per se. Like, they've taken all the elements from it and they've kind of shifted it around a little bit, in, different online correspondence. I mean, you have to go down the Google rabbit hole to figure out, what was said when, but it's there, you're in it, per se.
I think that's super smart because like 3rd edition, I was so blind to things in 4th edition, so I don't really know how they handled Forgotten Realms. It might have been a series of source books, but 3rd edition had that gigantic run of hardcover source books, which are great if you really like to read about Forgotten Realms, and I kind of do, so I have some of them. But like, it's a gigantic 13-volume library detailing the world. And
Right.
It's just like, do you really want to ask players to buy that again? Or do you want to revise that again? Like,
Yeah.
ugh.
So 4th edition, I remember it because I had it. It was one of the books that when I helped a buddy of mine close down his gaming store, he's like, here, take this.
Did they do just like a 1-volume guide too?
It was a campaign guide
Yeah.
and it was thick. It was almost 300 pages.
Yeah.
And it's made for Dungeon Masters.
Yeah, I can picture the cover now that you're mentioning it.
It's interesting because 4th edition, I remember it was like, oh, so you had like the DM's guide. Then you had multiple DM's guides.
Yeah.
And then you had like multiple players' handbooks.
Yep.
And then you had like this thick Forgotten Realms book. man, my back used to hurt when I had to move those books around.
I mean, third edition wasn't much better. I carried a lot of books because you guys all picked kits from every different book on they weren't kits then. They were, I guess, whatever.
Yeah.
It was too many books.
Listen, my L5 remembers 4th edition very, very well, and for all the wrong reasons.
It's barrier to entry to me is what it comes down to. Weirdly, the most love that Forgotten Realms gets out of me is from the video games. Neverwinter Night, Baldur's Gate.
Oh, everyone
Icewind
loves
Dale.
those
like,
games.
Those games are awesome. Like, I love those games. I could go on and on and on about Baldur's Gate.
And they're re-releasing all those games.
Yeah.
For multiple systems.
Planescape Torment as well.
I know you were really excited about that.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like your little puppy ears like perk up. I was like, what? A Planescape game is coming back? I can play it on my PlayStation?
It's one of the best video games ever made. And so, like, it works as a setting, especially if you have competent writers using it as a setting for the story that they're trying to tell, which is what you get out of the video game. You got that out of the comic books, too. Those were set in the Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, it's possible. And a lot of the novels, Prince of Lies is a fantastic novel. It's one of my favorite D&D novels.
Ringer Winter, Forgotten Realms.
Yeah.
I'm currently in Chult in Tomb of Annihilation right now. Never gonna get out of this jungle.
It serves its purpose, but as a whole, I think it's smart that Wizards is just sort of like ignoring the fact and just assuming that people are going to go back to the old material if they want to know more. Because it's out there. You can get it all on Drive-Thru.
Drive-Thru RPG, where you go to find the things that you don't want to carry around in your bag.
Yeah. Hey, PDFs. They're great.
They are awesome.
Very light.
So, Stu, do you have any final thoughts on Forgotten Realms?
Yeah, please don't send me hate mail about it. I get it. You like it. I don't. We'll go back into this in a less broad brush because I do want to kind of pick at some stuff. We got to talk about like the Drow in an episode. It's just so huge. Like you got to do an overview at some point. And when you do the overview, it's exhausting.
Well, I mean, that's the benefit of the show that we do. I mean, unfortunately, we're only able to currently put it out bi-weekly.
Yeah.
If you'd like to see it weekly, feel free to hit us up at Patreon, patreon.com/VintageRPG. Throw some money at us and we will be able to make more episodes.
There's the salesman I love.
It's coming out more now. I feel more comfortable doing it. And also, we put up a lot of great extra content on the Patreon. What I appreciate about the first year that we've done of this podcast is we've hit a lot of the big stops with broad strokes. I know there is so much deep history that we're going to be able to get into as we go, but you're right. We have to just open the door.
Yeah.
And just kind of give you a peek at what the house looks like before we start showing the individual rooms.
Yeah. I mean, like Drizzt deserves a whole episode, but like we can't talk
Certainly
about
does.
Drizzt before we talk about Forgotten Realms, right?
Exactly.
So that's my final takeaway is that it's really big. And if you look at it and really soak in how really big it is, it's like maybe too big.
All right, Stu. So let's talk about a different kind of role-playing game now. Things from the Flood from the creators of Tales from the Loop.
Gosh, I was so excited to hear about this. I think, did we talk about it at all on a previous pod? I don't know. I babble on so much.
We gushed about Tales from the Loop.
Yeah, I know we've talked about Tales from the Loop. So thing that I didn't realize getting into this is that it is not like an expansion of Tales from the Loop. They designed it as its own game that is similar to Tales from the Loop.
Okay.
Things from the Flood is set in the same world, and it basically uses the same system as Tales from the Loop. It starts in 1995 and deals with some fallout of some events that happen in the loop that make things more gritty and 90s-ish.
Are there chokers and ball chain wallets?
Of course, there's 9 Inch Nails records. And, they talk a lot about Beverly Hills 90210 and
Oh, for real?
Oh yeah. Like all of your pop culture 90s references are here. Slap bracelets are mentioned.
Jesus.
The world of the loop is like one that has like a whole bunch of like crazy technology. You got robots, you got magnetron ships that float in the air using magnetism, and you have the loops themselves, which are these mass accelerators that are buried under the ground, and they have secret technology that is never truly defined. And it could involve aliens, it could involve time travel, or whatever you desire for your weird science fiction game. But the idea is that you're kids in Tales from the Loop, and you're investigating mysteries that only you know about because adults are too dumb or preoccupied with their adult lives to really investigate or care. The difference now is that in Things from the Flood, you are teenagers. So you're also like angsty, and you wear Nirvana shirts, and
You have feelings.
yeah, and
Dark feelings.
lots of feelings,
Lots of journaling.
and and there's Some of the status quo has changed. There is something called the machine cancer. The loops have both been flooded. There's one in Boulder, one in Sweden, and the projects have basically been shut down. Robots are sort of infected by this machine cancer that makes them grow like protein tentacles. It's really weird.
I mean, it's the 90s, so, dreadlocks, I get it.
Yeah. But so the idea is that the 80s were a time of optimism with all of this technology. And now that the 90s are here, all of those technologies have basically failed. All the cool sci-fi technologies that are in the art have failed. And the world belongs to the teenagers because it's all about the internet.
Right. So you've gone from 99 Luft balloons to 9 Inch Nails.
Exactly. And your characters can die.
What? Really?
Yes.
Oh, shit.
Well, because it's higher stakes, man. Kurt Cobain kills himself, so why can't, the kids in your game?
Yeah, I mean, because you're right, they're teenagers.
Yeah, it works on a scar system. I think that you have a scar stat, and you blow enough rolls, you get enough scars. Your final scar takes you out of play. It doesn't have to necessarily kill you, but it's likely that it would because a lot of those are physical. But it could just be that like your parents, you've gotten into so much trouble that you have to move away or like you get institutionalized or something like that.
The ultimate grounding.
Yeah. It does succeed in really kind of changing the overall vibe. I think I like Tales from the Loop better overall.
Okay.
I think that scratches a clearer itch for me in terms of where my nostalgia's at and what I'm interested in playing. I'm an angsty adult, so I don't really need to review.
You don't say.
I've been like going from one existential crisis to another for 30 years. I don't really need to revisit my teenage ones. Like I feel like I solved those. On the other hand, I really do like 9 Inch Nails. So, it's cool. And there's so much more of Simon Stålenhag's art, which I think is absolutely gorgeous.
You cannot go wrong with it.
Yeah. And the books are so well designed. The system is easy to embrace. It is basically the same. You lose luck points, which was a sort of the balancer for like you get more stat bonuses for older characters in Tales from the Loop, and younger characters get luck points that they could spend to alter rolls, right?
Right.
Those aren't there anymore because you're all older kids.
Yeah, not a precocious child anymore.
Yeah. And, what teenager is lucky?
Not many.
Very cool, very exciting to read. It comes with a ton of scenarios, which is the main failing of Tales from the Loop. There's only like 4 scenarios, and they're fairly brief. This, I would say that a good half of the book is all scenario.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of material to work with. It looks like they figured out how to tell stories within the system a little bit better.
That's
And
great.
I think it's 7 or 8 different scenarios that are all part of the same story and all can go in different directions. I think the quality of that is really going to pull me or push me away from it. If it's awesome, we'll probably be playing it in the fall.
All right, so that is our episode. We're
done?
Yeah, we're done.
That's so fast.
Yeah, it's like 40 minutes.
God, they go so quick.
I know. We're talkers.
Yeah.
So that was the latest episode of the Vintage RPG Podcast. Thank you so much again for joining us for another awesome episode. Stu, where can people find you?
They could find me every day at Vintage RPG on Instagram.
Very cool. You can find me on the Twitter at Handbreaker. I tweet about cute animals. I tweet about professional wrestling. I tweet about Dungeons and Dragons. You could also find me on Instagram at John Hambone McGuire. That's where you see pictures of all my adventures. I'm leaving the house nowadays, so I'm doing stuff and it's entertaining. You could also check out my other podcast, My Tai Happy Hour. It is pop culture for weirdos wherever podcasts are found. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dega West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.